In his article, Cosmopolitanism, Peng Chia defines the titular concept as a passage from an intellectual ethos to a vision of a global political consciousness that is generated and sustained by institutional structures. For Chia, a cosmopolitan world is one which moves past national boundaries, differences, and power struggles towards a worldwide collective consciousness. In his article, he traces the origins of cosmopolitanism from Kant's pre-nationalist to Marx's post-nationalist ideas, showing how the rise of national consciousness altered understandings of cosmopolitanism. In this video, I will undertake an analysis of two films from this class, Mississippi Masala and Babel. I will explore how a cosmopolitan ethic is used differently in these two films. It exists as a concept in both films, as a condition of the globalized world, yet its impact in each film is quite different. Mississippi Masala showcases the development of a cosmopolitan sensibility in small-town Mississippi. Immigrant identities and the Black American experience are put in conversation with one another, resulting in a community that illustrates complex and worldly experiences. Kant argued that world trade provided the historical basis of cosmopolitan unity. In Mississippi Masala, it is world migration and local economy which develop the basis of cosmopolitanism. The unity seen between characters can be understood as expressly cosmopolitan rather than nationalist, because these characters are not connected through a sense of American identity. Instead, it is the connection between them based on their shared humanity and care for one another that becomes this cosmopolitanism.
Mississippi Masala opens when the family is still in Uganda. You can see that their home is a combination of Indian and Ugandan aesthetics. And this is especially prevalent when they're situated within the greater landscape. The family exists as a person, as a group, kind of moving between places. So we see them here in Uganda, but we understand that they are Indian, and then we explore their migration to America. So even within this one family, we have a really good example of this cosmopolitan ethic. This opening scene where they're saying goodbye to their, I presume, caretakers of the property is really poignant because it showcases this immediate connection between people of vastly different experiences. And while this family is absolutely habituated to Uganda, to life here, the repetition of the little boy saying bye, bye, bye as they're leaving is just a striking example of the way that they were never really able to stay. This transition from Uganda and across the map moving to Mississippi is important to really situate this film as a global film. There are two very important locations and they're both existing at the same time. Another interesting transition is between the Indian, Ugandan music to American jazz, which we hear. This scene is one of the first times that we see difference encountered. Here, Mina and Demetrius are meeting this man at the bar, and the man inquires if Mina is Mexican, and she says, "No, I'm Indian." And he doesn't believe her. This hesitation is occurring between them, where they're finding that they don't really understand each other. Even though the characters don't really understand each other, they are still encountering each other as equals. There is not a power imbalance that is occurring between them, where one character has much more power over the scene, the narrative, the story overall. And so this is where the main difference between Mississippi Masala's cosmopolitan ethic and Babel's exists. In Mississippi Masala, we see characters forming solidarity with one another. In the scene, the characters drink chai together and discuss how people of color in Mississippi should be standing together. As seen in the previous scene, there is not a power imbalance between these characters. They exist on an equal playing field, and they have similar agency to move the storyline along. Now we move from Mississippi Masala's cosmopolitanism, which is characterized by community, equal agency, and a shared world ethic, to Babel's cosmopolitanism, which is characterized by movement globally and by an exchange of objects, ideas, and people, but without that same ethic of care.
Olivier, in Communication and Real Confusion, Babel, contrasts ideal cosmopolitanism with the film's extant social reality, which reveals miscommunication and power struggles. Similar analytical work is undertaken by Rosa Urtigia in 9/11 and the Power of the Network Society in Babel, who suggests that the film showcases how a network society, a global information-saturated, interconnected landscape, can privilege certain stories over others. For Urtiga, the cosmopolitanism challenges in Babel come from the unstable global relationship following 9/11. If cosmopolitanism is understood as nations which are equal partners of a shared political ethos, Babel illustrates a world where this political ethic does not exist. Babel is characterized by power imbalance. The appearance of the film, given structure showcasing the global network, is one of equal representation. In the beginning of the film, each story is given equal weight and screen time. However, as the film progresses, it becomes clear that Richard and Susan's storyline is most emphasized. Theirs is the only story which connects to all of the other storylines, a choice which illustrates their importance. For Urtiga, unequal representation extends beyond individual storylines to showcase how the United States and Japan dominate Mexico and Morocco. Citizens of the latter two nations experience state brutality, while citizens of the former enact violence on those around them.
This scene perfectly showcases an unequal power balance in the storyline. We can see here this same phone call, which we see first from Amelie's perspective at the beginning, and then Richard's perspective at the end. And in one of the frames, we have a lot more context for what has happened, and that's in Richard's frame. And so even in these moments where the storyline meets and is equal, there's one story which is privileged above the other. Beyond the privileging of these more Western stories, there's also violence that is enacted against the non-Western, non-quote-unquote civilized societies. Here we see these two brothers who are in possession of a weapon from the Western world, from China, that gets them into a situation in which they are then facing state violence by the Moroccan police. This film forces viewers to contend with the fact that globalization is not always a good thing. These flows of money, power, and resources from the West to the rest of the world can carry with them this embedded violence that will then have devastating effects upon these people.
In conclusion, we see in these two films different ways in which the globalized world responds to each other. In Mississippi Masala, we see cultures clash and form beautiful relationships, while in Babel, the clash leads to violence and unequal representation. Both films are important for us to contend with. Analysis of both of these films suggests that cosmopolitanism is not always an ethic that can be achieved or should be achieved. But when we use it as a benchmark through which to analyze relationships with one another, it becomes a really useful analytical tool. Returning to Chia's initial analysis, which I discussed at the beginning, he finds that cosmopolitanism as a global concept or global political ethic is largely not possible. Instead, he sees it in small communities, such as immigrant communities, who are choosing to uplift each other in this global context. In times of great uncertainty, I believe that it is a turn towards these smaller communities that will allow us to continue forward.